Welcome back, I'm the Book Guy. If you've spent more than 5 seconds on BookTube, you've probably heard people talk about Malazan. It's a huge juggernaut of a series that just dominates the whole podium of most complex fantasy. But despite Malazan's massive online fame, most people only talk about the main sequence, Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. And yet, there are 15 other Malazan books that don't get anywhere near as much love or attention, despite often being just as good. Maybe even better. Yet even diehard Malazan fans will sometimes read the first 10 and then stop there. So today we're looking at all of Steven Erikson's extended Malazan books, and over the next 3 weeks we'll look at all the other books, including the works of Ian Esslement. I'm here to help you decide how far down the Malazan rabbit hole you want to go. But first, what are all these other books and how do they fit together? Let me break it down for you in very simple terms. So first we have the main 10 Malazan books. Yes, Book of the Fallen. Here are their covers and a list of their titles. This really is the best place to start with Malazan. If you want to know more about this sequence, I talk about it at length in these two earlier videos, the Beginner's Guide and How to Keep Going. Now they're early videos of mine and production's a bit rough in places, but I stand by the content, and that should answer any questions you have about Book of the Fallen, which we're not focusing on today. Now after Steven Erikson finished the main sequence, he planned to write a prequel trilogy and a sequel trilogy. The prequels are the Kharkanas Trilogy. So far we have Forge of Darkness and Fall of Light. The third book, Walk in Shadows, is still to come. This trilogy is set 300,000 years earlier. Despite that huge time gap, there's still a lot of familiar faces, like Animander Rake and Mother Dark and Hood, plus lots of other immortal ascendants. This trilogy is epic and deals with ancient secrets and great magics. Then we have the sequels, the Witness Trilogy. There's just one of them so far, The God Is Not Willing. This takes place just 10 years after the main series is completed and returns to the continent of Xenobakis, where several books in the main sequence take place. It picks up a few old characters and plot lines, but it is mostly new stuff. And we have one of the last remaining bridge burners in active duty. There's still 2 more of these books to come, and Erikson has mentioned that it's likely that they'll take place on the other continents, picking up where other Malazan Book of the Fallen books left off, but we'll discuss that more later. And yet, there's one other series Erikson is working on. These are the Bauchelain and Korbal Broach novellas, and they definitely don't get enough attention. Bauchelain and Korbal Broach are 2 necromancers who practice dark magic, and the stories are about them and their very put-upon, long-suffering manservant, Reese. These are dark comedies, or perhaps horror comedies. So genuinely hilarious, genuinely terrifying. Think like Shaun of the Dead, or maybe Tucker and Dale versus Evil. These are fun little experiments that see Erikson really flex his writing muscles in new creative ways. Now, these 2 books are actually a collection of novellas. So each novella is about 100 pages long, and there's 3 per book, so 6 stories in total. And Erikson has confirmed there will be 9 stories in total, and yes, making up a 3rd volume to finish this series. So you really should think of Bauchelain and Korbal Broach as being another trilogy with 1 more to come. So these 5 books on the shelf behind me and the 3 series they comprise are what we're focusing on today. We're going to look at the strengths and weaknesses of each one to help you decide if you want to read them. But while we're here, let's just look over the rest of the series real quickly just to cover all of our bases. So there are 10 other books in the Malazan world by the author Ian Esslement. So Steven and Ian are long-term friends and collaborators on all projects together. Ian wrote these 6 books, novels of the Malazan Empire. This is his main sequence, just like Book of the Fallen is Steven's main sequence. These 2 series do overlap and occur within the same time frame, and they can be read in chronological order if you choose to skip back and forth between them wherever they intersect. However, they don't occur in the same locations. Take a look at this map of the Malazan world. So Steven's main sequence all take place in these locations, as we discussed in the earlier video on Book of the Fallen. The continents of Xenobakis and 7 cities are the outer colonies of the Malazan Empire. And way down in the Lesser Empire, That's where Malazan hasn't even reached yet. Well, Ian's books take place mostly towards the center of the Malazan Empire, hence the title, Novels of the Malazan Empire. Let me just lay it out for you. So Ian's first 3 books all take place here in the continent of Quantali. His 4th book is up in Genebakis, and that's the one that has the most overlap with Steven's books. And his 5th and 6th are in new locations to the south. As you can see, Ian's books just don't overlap very much with Book of the Fallen, so it really is okay if you choose to read all of Book of the Fallen and then all of Novels of the Malazan Empire, but we'll discuss that more next week. And finally, after Ian finished his 6-book main sequence, he started working on his prequels, and that is these 4 books, the Path to Ascendancy series. We have 4 books in the series so far, there will be 6 in total, just like with his main sequence, so 6 and 6. This prequel series is more like 50 years before the main sequence, although the exact number is a bit unclear. So it's a shorter time span than Steven's ancient prequels. This series is all about the young mage Keleved and the assassin Dancer, the 2 great minds who build the Malazan Empire. This is Malazan's origin story. So we will talk about Ian's 2 series over the next 2 weeks. But for now, you know all about the Malazan books and how they fit together. You may be wondering about reading order. Natural question. Well, the authors don't recommend reading it in chronological order where you start with the prequels. You can, but it's not a great idea. They recommend reading it in the order of publication. However, as someone who's read all of them, I personally think you can split it by series. So I did all of Malazan Book of the Fallen, then all Novels of the Malazan Empire, and then I worked through prequels and sequels. That was perfectly fine. There's a certain amount of reader's choice here, and it really depends on how dedicated you are. If you know that you want to read all 25 books, then yes, go ahead, read it in publication order. But if you think maybe I've got 12 books in me, then by all means pick and choose. Read what you want. Well, that establishes context. Now for today, let's dive into Steven Erikson's extended Malazan works, starting with his prequel trilogy, Kharkanas. Witness. Long ago, the Tiste were all one people who served under Mother Dark, their queen and goddess. They lived in the Warren of Bauchelain, a magical realm that existed alongside the rest of the world, and yet apart. All is peaceful. And yet, the people are unsettled. The Tiste don't like Mother Dark's consort, boyfriend, the mysterious Lord Draconis. He's weird and creepy in his distant castle and his strange offspring. The people would much prefer Eurosander, the charming and likable warrior hero, to stand at their queen's side as her number 2. The Tiste start dividing between who they prefer as their queen's second, and the leadership struggle to maintain order as the threat of civil war looms over all. And yet, Mother Dark's son, Anomander Rake, the first son of darkness, has a plan to bring peace by forging a powerful sword. Meanwhile, an old power emerges from the seas. The ancient race of the Azathanai have come back to the realm of the Tiste. Do they have a hand in the growing unrest? To what end? This is the tale of the Elder Days, of ancient tragedy, betrayals, and the sundering of a people. This is the tale that sets the stage for all stories to come. So the world of Malazan was pretty different 300,000 years ago. There's no Malazans, and most of the locations have very different names. Truth be told, I only have the vaguest idea of where on the map this takes place. That didn't impact my reading very much at all, you see, because this mostly takes place in a warren. Remember, the warrens are where magic comes from. Think of them as almost being like parallel worlds. You can step into a warren and travel alongside the real world, or you can open a portal to a warren and draw magic straight out of it. There are many different warrens, and each one allows a different type of power. The Tiste people use Bauchelain, the Warren of Darkness, and they also live inside of it. The real highlight of the story here is the ancient races. So the Tiste Andi, the Azathanai, and the Elder Gods, they're all like the boogeymen of the original series. series. They loom in the shadows, creeping just out of sight. They're a huge mystery, and we only see careful glimpses of them in the main sequence. But in Kharkanas, they're on full display. It's a delightful piece of fan service for those who have stuck with the series for so long. This adds so much detail and context for the wider series, even reframing a few things that we thought we understood. So you could technically read the series first, but again, it is strongly recommended to read it after Book of the Fallen. Also, in the second book, we start spending time with the Jagged. They're a nova of the ancient races, and they're distinct for having great tusks in their mouth and incredible magic. We see several familiar faces among the Jagged, and we learn greater context for their society and culture. But the focus of the story really is on the Tiste people. When we read the main sequence Book of the Fallen, we see that there are 3 races of elves. Sorry, Tiste. Yeah, the Tiste are totally not elves. So we have the Tiste Andi, they're the children of darkness, the Tiste Adur, children of shadow, and the Tiste Leosin, children of light. The worst.
Hate those guys.
Yet at the start of the Kharkanas Trilogy, they're all one, happy people, united and living in harmony.
Hey, little guy, what are you doing? Oh no.
Yeah, this series is a bloody tragedy. It's about how everything falls apart. So the plot lines are pretty complex. In typical Malazan fashion, there's about a dozen different plot lines all going at once, and it can be a bit tricky to keep track of them. But to help you keep track, just remember, you can group all of the plot lines in this book into 2 categories. The leadership of the Tiste, trying to maintain order, and the common people, who are running wild with rumors and speculation. Oh, I just cannot emphasize enough how brilliant this series is without going into spoilers, but I am keeping it spoiler-free. So the leadership plot lines show how some leaders choose to do nothing and hope that everything just sorts itself out. Others will escalate with violence of their own, and others try to compromise and keep everyone happy. Every option seems to make sense at the time. And the commoner plot lines show how they often only see part of the picture, but assume they know exactly what's going on. We see how old wounds and lingering prejudice can surge to the surface at the slightest provocation. And we see how quickly regular people can become monsters. Through all of these multiple plot lines, we see this growing conflict from all perspectives and gain a greater understanding of the scope involved here. Remember, Steven Erikson is also an anthropologist and archaeologist. He's an expert on the rise and fall of cultures and empires. So he has created societal collapse with rather chilling realism. I found this series to be culturally relevant. That said, there is a third category of plotline here, and that is all the weird stuff to do with the Ascendants and gods. Because let's face it, this is Malazan, which means the gods are going to be a bunch of douchebags who do whatever the hell they want and generally ruin everything. But of particular note here is the children, Malice and Envy. So fans of the original series will recognize them, but here they're 2 young children who were given immortality and godlike powers far too early, and now they're basically sociopathic and insane. Their plotline is a little bit more unhinged horror, but damn, it's captivating as hell. One last detail I should mention is the structure. So in Book of the Fallen, every book can stand alone. Think of them like episodes instead of one big continuous story like The Wheel of Time. You don't have to read multiple books to experience an ending, but that is not the case for Kharkanas. This is a trilogy. It's one story split into multiple parts. So when I got to the end of Forge of Darkness, I was a little disappointed that there was still so much left unresolved. But all the same plotlines were picked up immediately in Book 2 and continued. And I'm going to say it now, Fall of Light is the best Malazan book. Yeah, I said it. I've gone on record, I stand by it. So just keep that in mind, that these plotlines are building across multiple books towards a big finish. Now, sometimes people say that Erikson's character writing is weak. It's a rather common critique of him, but I also think it is 100% wrong. His character writing is brilliant and easily some of the best in the business, but it can be hard to sometimes grasp Erikson's characters among such a big world with so many complex plot lines. Still, there is a lot to love here in terms of characters. This series is about 50-50 new characters and old characters returning in terms of protagonists. So yes, we already know several characters among the Tiste leadership, but all the commoners are new characters, generally speaking. If you pick up this book though, hoping for 900 pages of Animander Rake, you're gonna be disappointed. Erikson also does some of his best character writing in this series. So he has a ton of gods and immortals that he writes with such intense depth and wisdom. They feel inhuman and impossibly old, which is such an achievement to capture. He also writes quite a few children. There's one child who thinks it's great to be a soldier until he's confronted with the horror of war. There's one child who witnesses everyone he knows being massacred and tragically has no idea why it would happen. And Arathan, son of Lord Draconis, struggles to come out of his isolated childhood and find some purpose in life, so has a coming-of-age story. Truly, Erikson is incredible at writing children, and it doesn't get talked about enough. The range of character writing is incredible, picking all types of people from all walks of life and watching a crisis unfold through all of their eyes. While Malazan has always had a hand in tragedy, Book of the Fallen, this series is probably the darkest. Racism, segregation, hate crimes, genocide. This series has it all. There's so many layers of themes and meaning in this series, and there's so much to unpack. I'm honestly not sure if I'm the person to do this, but if I may humbly attempt it, Malazan draws from a lot of real history to show some of the darkest acts that humans are capable of committing, so the series can be confronting at times. But it's also really messy. You see, in the movies, if we see a democracy crumble and an evil dictator take over, it's because that guy was just really, really evil and smart and there was nothing we could do. But Malazan paints a very different reality. Sometimes societies fall apart not because of great evil or brilliance, but because of the utter failure of every level of leadership. Some leaders are so passive that they do nothing because they don't want to risk rocking the boat too much and upsetting people. Others try to compromise over and over again. Others will escalate the situation with violence, fighting fire with fire. And sometimes human nature is just so dark and twisted that it takes the first opportunity to come out and act with hatred and cruelty. In many ways, I saw this series as a warning. It's a historical depiction of how countries fall apart and atrocities are committed. It also shows the warning signs of how to spot them. This is perhaps the most culturally significant work Erikson has done to date. As much as I wanted to stand here and list every single deeper theme in Malazan, I just don't think I could do it. And I'm not sure if anyone will watch it, but you'll have to read it for yourself. Now, there's one last thing I need to discuss about Kharkanas before we move on. I hate to say it, but this series has massively underperformed. When Erikson was writing Book of the Fallen, he had a steady following. He wasn't making big money, but he was doing okay. Sales were consistent. When he finished the main sequence, he started Kharkanas, and the fans just didn't show up. Erikson has talked about this at length on his Facebook page. Essentially, he struck a deal with his publisher to write these 3 trilogies behind me, if you will. The prequels, sequels, and novellas. He signed a contract. And yet the prequels have just not sold very well. Fall of Light, I think, is the best Malazan book, and is also the book that has sold the least copies, which is an outrage. Now, the exact details on the situation are a bit vague, but from my understanding of the timeline, Forge of Darkness underperformed, and Steven had to convince the publisher to let him release Fall of Light. Then that underperformed too, so he had to switch gears and move over to the Witness Trilogy, the sequels, hoping the fans would actually show up for that, which they kinda did. It was a bit of a mid-response, but it was enough to keep the ball rolling. Here's the thing. Just about everyone who's read these 3 other novels all say that they're brilliant, but people just weren't reading them. Why? It's hard to say. Maybe it's series fatigue, it is a long series. Maybe it was because they were waiting for the trilogies to be complete, I was originally. Or maybe they just wanted the badge of honor of saying, I finished Book of the Fallen, and didn't actually care about the story itself. It's hard to know. But that's the whole reason I wanted to make this long video today, to show that the extended Malazan books have some of Steven's best work yet. and I cannot recommend them enough to long-term Malazan fans or to new readers. Get on this series. One bit of good news, Steven announced on his Facebook page on Boxing Day that he's working on Walk in Shadow, and that should be the final book in the Kharkanas Trilogy. He's hoping to finish most of the writing by April 2025, although it is anyone's guess how long edits, rewrites, publication will take, but it is his primary focus for now, and I cannot wait for it. Alright, let's move from prequels to sequels. 15 years ago, 3 terrifying Teblor warriors descended from the mountains to wreak havoc on the town of Silver Lake, raping and murdering through civilians. The Teblor are giants, over 9 feet high, with incredible strength, 4 lungs, and even some resistance to magic. Just 3 of them caused terrible destruction wherever they went. And now, thousands of Teblor warriors are poised to invade the land of Xenobakis, and the only thing standing in their way is a single band of Malazan soldiers, led by one of the last bridge burners. It's true, the Malazan Empire is not what it once was, and these new recruits have none of the discipline of the old. But Spindle, their commander, will hold them together. And yet, as everyone prepares for war, some begin to wonder why the Teblor are invading now. What shifted among their people? Or perhaps, what power is great enough to threaten even the land of giants? So this story returns us to the continent of Xenobakis. If you look on the map, Book of the Fallen spent a lot of time here, in books 1, 3, and 8. So if you do want to read The God Is Not Willing, you have to at least have read Toll of the Hounds, okay? That said, much of this story is new. There are a couple of returning characters and revisiting old places, but it's predominantly new stuff. So don't expect a big reunion of old friends. This is especially true for one character in particular, avoiding spoilers here, but the story refers many times to the mighty Kasa Orlong, one of those 3 Teblor warriors who invaded long ago. But he's not in the book itself. This was surprising to a few fans. There was a wide speculation that the Witness Trilogy was going to be the Kasa Orlong Trilogy, but it's just not.
This story's about me, not him.
I have to warn you of that, so your expectations are in the right place. Now, much of the story takes place up in the far north. If you look on this map here, zoomed in on Xenobakis, you'll see that the Toblai Tundra, right up here on the top left. This is where the Teblor warriors live, the giants. The tundra is a massive wall of ice, over 100 miles long, separating them from the rest of civilization. So much of the story takes place on that border here. Let's look at some of the main characters. This book has a ton of point-of-view characters, as with all Erikson novels. However, there are 3 in particular that get a lot of screen time. We get some extra deep character work in this book. There's Spindle, known informally as the Last Bridge Burner. This guy has the most extreme case of survivor's guilt you've ever seen. He's filled with regrets. Perhaps his biggest being that he's still in the Malazan army and he's stuck with the worst troops he's ever had.
We've got a long way to go.
If he doesn't hold them together, no one will. But he has to conquer his own demons of grief before he can find the will required to do it. There's Rant. This poor kid is the son of Kasa Orlong, one of the 3 Teblor warriors who invaded 15 years ago. Rant is the product of rape. He's inherited his father's strength, but he lives in a town where everyone despises the sight of him. His mother, in some ways, most of all. Rant wonders if he would actually belong if he found his father, or maybe if he tried to kill his father instead. Yet Rant decides to journey to the realm of the Teblor, his father's people, in the hope that they will accept him. Finally, there's Stillwater, who is possibly my new favorite Malazan character. She's an assassin who fights with knives. Now yes, she can summon a Warren, which technically makes her a mage, but she only uses it to help her with her knife fighting, so that doesn't count. Stillwater is a killer with a heart of gold, and likewise she's full of contradictions and ends up being a truly baffling but brilliant character. The plots here are a little bit simpler than in most books, mostly because it's a shorter book than we normally see in the Malazan series. We have Spindle and the Malazan troops preparing for battle and trying to evacuate the towns in the Teblor's path. We have Rant and his journey across the world, encountering strange beings and old magics, as we see on the front cover. And Stillwater, well, she's just an agent of chaos, but much of her goals are about assassinating anyone who stands in the way of evacuating the civilians. Not that she cares about the civilians. She's brilliant. As I said, there are cameos of a few old beloved characters, and there are references to where a few of the plotlines are up to these days 10 years later. There's something for returning Malazan fans, but you really should look at this one as a new story. As with all Malazan books, this one has heavy themes and content. The big one is about sexual assault, so trigger warning, we spend a lot of time discussing it in this one. Rant is the result of this, and we see how even decades later, his mother is still traumatized and broken from that experience. And it's truly awful. We see how the damage of assault can last for years and years, and how incredibly hard it is to be a survivor. Although, just to be clear, Rant's mother is not a good survivor. Remember, sometimes you go through something traumatic and it destroys you and turns you into a terrible, broken person. We often see only the success stories of people online who fought tooth and nail to survive their abuse with their identity and their soul intact. But it doesn't always happen. We also see a depiction of conflict where two peoples want the same land. It's unclear exactly why at first. It could be a case of one people being the colonizer, who's simply determined to steal someone else's land just because they can get away with it, or perhaps they justify it with their god's approval.
God has given us this land for our new home. So, well, you're gonna have to leave.
Yet there are some cases of two people battling for the same land where it's not about greed or stealing. Sometimes two groups of people need the same land. Think like Princess Mononoke, where the humans and the animals all need somewhere to live and can't help encroaching on each other's space. So who deserves to live here? These are some heavy themes that Erikson explores with all of his usual wisdom and understanding of human societies. Before we move on, what can we expect from the rest of the Witness Trilogy? Well, book 1 of Witness is set in Janabakis. It's very likely that the other books will return to the other continents. Remember, Book of the Fallen spends a lot of time in 7 cities and the Lether Empire. So Steven has said it's likely that one Book of Witness will be set in each of these other locations. Also, just to be wild, Erikson has confirmed a bonus novel. This guy is a beast, but he posted on Facebook saying that he wrote an extra novel for the Witness Trilogy, and there will now be 4 in total. The extra novel is called No Life Forsaken, and he's already written it and sent it to the publishers. So I'm not even sure what that's about, but good for him, and I can't wait to see what updates we get about it. Alright, let's move on to the Novellas and Steven's dark comedy series. Emancipator Reese needs a job. For some reason, all of his employers keep dying. So when he sees a job ad for a manservant, he doesn't ask too many questions about it, such as why there was a job opening, or why he's the only applicant. His employer, Bauchelain, seems like a reasonable man. He's a student of magic and travels for his experiments, which sounds like a lovely chance to see the world. Bauchelain's only warning is to try to avoid his companion, the mysterious Korbal Broach. As ominous as that sounds, Reese doesn't complain and happily accepts the new job. Little does he know the absolutely bonkers journey he's about to undertake, both bizarre and horrifying. Sometimes these two dark sorcerers fix the entire society they enter. Other times they cause its total collapse. These guys are sheer bloody agents of chaos, where you never know what's gonna happen next. Okay, the reading order here is bizarre, so please bear with me as I try to explain this. So there are 6 novellas, and this is the order that they were written in. The problem with this order is that number 3, The Lees of Laughter's End, and number 5, The Worms of Blairmonth, are actually connected. They're 2 parts of the same story, and they should be read together. However, for some reason, the publishers failed to fix this. If you read through these books in Volume 1 and Volume 2, this is the order that they were published in. And as you can see, they just kind of moved it around and didn't actually put the two they needed together. I don't know why this was. So that's the order I read them in, and I found it annoying. So may I suggest read it in this order, so that the two that belong together go together. Okay, so in light of this order, I'm going to take a quick look at each story in the series in my suggested order. First, Blood Follows. This is the origin story, and it should definitely be read first. Reese takes a new job, and we meet the two necromancers and see exactly what we're getting in for. There are also some gruesome murders taking place elsewhere in the city, and a detective is investigating. But the shocking revelation is pretty damn messed up, and it perfectly sets the tone for the rest of the series. Yes, it's a horror comedy. Yet despite this macabre story, I laughed out loud many times while reading this one, and all of the others. In The Healthy Dead, our trio travel to a city where everyone is obsessed with exercise. Health and fitness is the one and only goal in life. And yet for these necromancers who deal in life and death, it might just be the perfect opportunity for some of their studies. Steven uses this novella to add social commentary on society's obsession with form and appearance. In The Lees of Laughter's End, okay, this one might just be my favorite of the 6. The trio are on board a cursed ship and everything goes wrong. It's just absolute chaos. It's a comedy of errors story. So monsters have been summoned on board, there are more monsters in the water. Bauchelain could fix it, but he's accidentally just been drugged. And Korbal Broach thinks he'll fix everything with some really messed up necromancy, and the crew just keep dying in horrible accidents. It's wild and bloody and absolutely brilliant. In The Worms of Blairmouth, after the chaos of the ship, the survivors are washed ashore. And there they find a realm where a tyrant rules. An evil sorcerer who summons demons is now oppressing the people. Well, Bauchelain can't let that stand. Not out of any noble reason, the land simply ain't big enough for 3 evil sorcerers. Maybe it's time for these dark ones to try to do some good. If they can. As for Cracked Pot Trail, okay, this is the big one. While all the other novellas are about 100 pages, this one is 200 pages. It's basically a full book, and it's one of the most brilliant yet bizarre things I've ever read. So the concept of the story is that there's a big competition for artists in a different city. So like America's Got Talent. Performers of all types, of all skills, are traveling from far and wide to compete for fame and fortune. Our story shows a group of travelers all heading to that city to compete, except it's a 30-day journey and they've just run out of food. So every night, the artists must perform for all the travelers. Whoever is judged the worst is killed and eaten. Now the remaining artists are literally performing for their lives. This story is crazy. For one, there's just so many characters traveling in this caravan. Also, Bauchelain and Korbal Broach and Manservant Reese are not even in this one. This is all the characters from the previous novellas. And it's tricky to comprehend because it spends so much time telling us the artist's in-world stories. So we'll sometimes get 2 pages with one character telling their story as part of their performance. And then another character gets up and tells a different story. And all with interjections from the characters in the crowd. And then they judge whose story was best. This is a profound commentary on the nature of art. The artists must perform to a bunch of barely literate barbarian critics who will literally eat them if they perform poorly. And yet, the audience is clearly too stupid to understand the quality of fine art. They often judge an artist harshly because they didn't perform the way they thought they should, even though they know nothing about art. It becomes extra complex because the main character is one of those artists, and he's the smartest one of all. He's trying to keep everyone alive by helping them with their own stories. With subtle interjections from within the crowd, he shapes the other artists' stories in the direction the crowd actually wants. So this story is surprisingly nuanced with many layers. It's also very, very slow. In fact, the first 20 to 30 pages are literally just listing all the characters traveling in the caravan. Even then, it's still very hard to keep track of them. Still, this is the novella that stayed with me for the longest. For better or worse. And finally, The Fiends of Nightmaria. In the final story for now, Bauchelain becomes a king. which is obviously just a bad idea for all parties involved. The people quickly become restless under the rule of this evil sorcerer. Not to mention, a literal god is wandering around in the depths of Bauchelain's castle, left there by the previous occupant. And Rhys, our dear manservant, is finally starting to unravel at the edges of his mind. Now, as for the remaining 3 stories, that will be Volume 3. Technically, the 7th novella has been written. It's called Upon a Dark of Evil Overlords. However, Steven actually wrote this on pen and paper, so that he could sell the original copy for charity, because he's awesome. The pages are all available for free on his Facebook page. However, this is what they look like, and I personally found the handwriting really difficult to read, and basically chose to give up and just simply read it at another time. I'm waiting for the 8th and 9th novella to be published in the conclusive Volume 3. Steven normally writes these novellas as a break between larger novel projects, so we should see the final 2 completed in the coming years as he does the final of these books. And that's it. That's an in-depth guide to all of Steven Erikson's extended Malazan works. Now, it is entirely up to you which ones you choose to read, but I hope now you feel more confident about knowing which ones you want to try. Let me know which of today's books stood out to you the most. Good luck and happy reading. Remember, next week we are looking at the novels of the Malazan Empire, and the week after, Path to Ascendancy, to round out the full Malazan journey. I hope you'll join me for those. Now, if you like this video, please leave a comment, subscribe, come back again. You can even support me by checking out my shop or my Patreon or my own books, The Immortal Investigations, an urban fantasy series. You can check out that video there if you want to know more about that one. But anyway, I will see you next week. I hope you enjoy a good book today. Bye!